Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Inshallah, we start in a couple of minutes. Alright, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah, salallahu, alaihi, wasallam. So last time we were left off after the battle of the Confederates and the betrayal of Bani Qurayza, and we're basically towards the end of the battle of the Confederates, where basically the Prophet ﷺ is in a very difficult situation and the Muslims are in a very difficult situation, and that is that they were sold out, they were betrayed. The Treaty of Medina was violated, right? Because I mean that's something that everyone was supposed to participate in, Jewish, Christian, whoever is, Kafir, was supposed to basically be part of this treaty. Meaning, if you have to fight together, you have to defend. And here specifically, there's no ambiguity that somehow okay, we didn't agree to go and have this or that, to fight outside with you. Here it's about defending Medina. It's about defending Medina itself. So the Prophet ﷺ was clear in the requirements to defend Medina. But the Jews, of course, were basically treacherous in this. And that's why there's a lot of people say it's like anti-Semitism in the Muslim text. It's not anti-Semitism. It is anti the Jews of Medina because of what they have done. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the people of Musa alayhi salam and how they have behaved and what they have done. So there is sometimes an aura or a feeling, like it's anti-Semitism. But it is not anti-Semitism. It has to do only with people being treacherous. If the Jews would have been true to their, at that time, I'm talking about Jews here, I'm talking about those at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Can we hold him accountable for what, today's Jews for what they have done? Not really. We hold them accountable to what they're doing today, right? So that is something that we are talking about. Anyway, what happened is, let's go back to the end of the attack of the Confederates on the Prophet salallahu, alaihi, wasallam. So the Prophet ﷺ was basically encircled. It was a very, very tough time. It was actually the winter time. So if you know anything about Medina, it's cold and so on. So anyway, let's not get into too many details. Bottom line is that the Jews were supposed to defend different parts of Medina. And they failed to do that. And what happened is it exposed the Muslims and almost they got destroyed. So here you're having like all women, men, children could have been killed, or of course the men would have been killed and the women and the children would have been enslaved. And that is basically the way it happens in that time. Okay, it was like the culture. If two nations fight, then basically one would enslave the other if they win over them. It was a culture of war. Like today, it's kind of like, all right, maybe not territorial colonization in 2020, 2021, but it is definitely colonization of the resources and so on and so forth. And even land. we see till the 1980s, 89 up to 89, Germany was still controlled by Soviet, Russia, right? The Berlin Wall, the Iron Curtain. I mean, this is, in the end, was land clash. You talk about 1989, okay? All of us were alive when the Berlin Wall fell, right? Why was the Berlin Wall there? There was an agreement who administers and who takes care of Germany after the Second World War and how it's been split. So we see that people were colonizing, people were taking resources, and so on and so forth. So there's a culture of war that people need to understand. Bottom line is, they left. They became treacherous. They left their positions. They tried to give the Muslims in, and the Confederates tried everything to get rid of the Muslims. And you remember there was a trench around the Medina, so it was very difficult for them to get in. We talked about some of the scrimmages that took place. Ali had a fight with one of the leaders of Quraysh and he killed him. But in the end, there was not a lot of fighting taking place. It was a very strategic move. It was a war of the nerves. You know, it's a psychological warfare. Who's going to give up? Who's going to resist? So one of the companions, though, they came with an interesting tactic. An interesting tactic. Okay. There's one person by the name of Naim ibn Mas'ud, who came to him with the acceptance of Islam, to the Prophet ﷺ. So he advised him to keep his conversion secret. So Naim ibn Mas'ud came to the Prophet ﷺ accepting Islam. Now look at the genius. Look at the genius of the Prophet ﷺ. So he kept it hidden, right? You know, I was looking at The Art of War this morning, and you know, they say that The Art of War is a very old war manual written by a general, Sun Tzu, who basically makes it one of the principles of war that you want to expend as little resources as possible and energy. And if you can win the war without having to actually fight, that is the best. And you'll even fight the famous statement of the Prophet ﷺ in that book. It's a concept, obviously, because this book was written before the Prophet ﷺ, you know, was born. But it says a war is deception. Al-harbu khida. Okay, al-harbu khida. War is deception. Strategy, ability, deceiving. When you are weak, appear strong. When you're strong, appear weak. When you are far, appear close. When you're close, appear far. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ is an amazing war strategist. So what he says, keep your conversion secret and send him back to the idolaters to cause disorder amongst them. Okay? Cause disorder, right? And subhanAllah, again, the art of war says the same thing, right? If you can cause disorder, send spies, rise up people, you know, keep the least destruction possible. And we see this in the statement of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, instructed and learning, of course, from the Prophet salallahu, alaihi, wasallam himself, that don't destroy, you know, cattle and trees and places and all that, and, you know, just like that, right? People used to, if you look into history, the Mongols, right? The Mongols are famous for just burning everything, destroying Tatars, others. That's not what Islam, because why? Even as the art of war says, because you can use those resources. You need that. Those places can be under your protection. And there's a lot of khair that can come up. So you don't want to cut yourself short. So, Naim ibn Mas'ud is a very important person in this story, in this event in history of Islam. He said, You are just one man, but you can try on our behalf to make them to desert one another. For war is deception. Al-harbu khida. War is deception. So Naim set off for the Quraysh, to whom he had been an intimate friend in Jahiliyyah. He said, Banu Qurayda, you know how much I love you. So he went to Qurayda. These are the people who became treacherous and disobeyed the Prophet salallahu, alaihi, wasallam. So he said, oh Banu Qurayda, you know how much I love you. Right? And special relationship between you and I. They said, you're right, we have no grievances against you. So he continued, the Quraysh and Ghatafan are not like you. Okay, he's talking about Ghatafan, another tribe. He said, this is your territory. These are your properties, children's wives. You cannot move from it to another place. The Quraysh and Ghatafan have come to fight Muhammad and his companions. You have supported them against him. However, their territory, properties, and women are elsewhere. So they're not like you. If they see any opportunity, they will seize it. But if not, they will return to their homes and leave you and the men in your territory. You have no power to deal with him if you have to confront him alone. Okay? So look at that. Smart. Very smart. So what is he saying to them? He's basically trying to get them worried. Watch what's going to happen. Very, very. And this is the idea of the Prophet salallahu, alaihi wasallam. He's just executing. So he's getting him scared, saying, man, these people are going to leave you. This is your land. You're going to be left with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? You're going to have an issue. So they said, okay, they said, yeah, man, they got worried. They became worried. So he left and he went to the Quraysh and Abu Sufyan and he said to them, you know how much I love you and my differences with Muhammad. So he's using the same tactic. Something has reached my hearing, which I thought is best to inform you, but keep it a secret. And they agreed. And he continued, you should know that the Jews have repented and they have behaved the way they behaved towards Muhammad, and they have sent to him saying that they have repented for they have done or whatever. And basically they had handed over some of the noble of the two tribes, the Quraysh and the Ghatafan, so they might kill them. So basically he's saying that they're going to be treacherous, they're going to hand you over. So if the Jews send to you asking for some of your men as a surety, do not give them a single man. All right? So what he's saying is that I heard that the Quraysh are going to basically, Qurayza are going to come to you, to the Quraysh, Abu Sufyan, and ask some of your men as warranty, as guarantee. But remember, just before, he went and told him, these guys are going to leave you, so be careful. So he's putting doubts in Qurayza that Quraysh are going to leave, and he's putting doubts in Quraysh that Qurayza is going to come and ask for insurance, right? And which is exactly what's going to happen, right? Because that's the whole point. Qurayza is going to be upset and fearful that Quraysh might leave, so they say, look, we're scared that you're going to leave, so give us some insurance. Look at the amazing tactic. So he says, we have no grievances against you. He continued, well, keep what I shall say a secret. When they agreed to do so, he told them exactly what he told the Quraysh and gave them the same warning. So on Friday, night of Shawwal in the 5th year, Allah arranged it so that his Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Abu Sufyan and the leaders of Ghatafan should send a delegation to Banu Qurayza, headed by Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl. Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl. The delegation said, we are not in our homes, our cattle and sheep are being consumed. So in the morning, come out for battle. Let us fight Muhammad until we settle the score between him and us. The Jews replied, today is Saturday, we do not work. Okay, in the past someone violated this and they were afflicted. Besides, we shall not fight Muhammad with you until you give us a surety of your man. Boom, right there. Right there. That's exactly what they were looking for. When the delegation returned with this message from Banu Qurayza, the Quraysh and the Ghatafan said that it was true what Naim has told us. They sent back to Banu Qurayza saying that they would not give them a single man and if they wanted war, they should go out and fight. Upon hearing this, the Jews said to one another that it was true what Naim had told us. Do you see? Perfect setup. One man can make a war turn around. The people had no urge to fight. If they saw the opportunity, they would see it. Otherwise, they would retreat to their country. In this way, the Muslims were successful in undoing the knots of alliances, the Confederates that were against them. So now, on a windy night, when icy gusts of wind were freezing faces and skins and keeping men rigid in their places in the hope of warmth and to escape from the cold descending on the rocks, and then the enemy began planning a decisive move to end this unsuccessful battle. It was though the roar of the violent wind were a whip which spurred on the attackers not to delay in extricating themselves from the situation. The Prophet ﷺ looked from behind the walls of Medina, and around him were his companions fixed in their places, staring at the horizon with caution, their hopes pinned on the unseen, even though the cold was so heavy and dark. If you've ever been to Medina in the winter, you know that it is cold. It's not cold like Canada or Romania. I'm not sure if you guys experience real cold. Canada is even worse than Romania. You'll die if you stay more than half an hour outside. But in Medina, it's bearable. But obviously, they didn't have like, big fur coats and so on. I mean, they had some stuff, but it was cold. So the Confederates were just seated in rows. Abu Sufyan and those with him were above, and the Qurayda, whom we feared, were below. There was never a night of such intense darkness or violent wind as that night. There were sounds like thunderbolts in the wind, and the darkness was so intense that none of us could see his finger. SubhanAllah. I had no protection from the enemy or the cold except the shawl of my wife, which reached out only to my knees. Look at that. Okay? He only had a shawl from his wife. SubhanAllah. Allah. This is Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman. If you know who is Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman, right? He is Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman. Now, the Prophet ﷺ came to me while I was seated, cross-legged on the ground, and asked who I was. I replied that I was Hudayfa. And he asked, Hudayfa? I recalled in my position, standing up. I said, yes, O Messenger of Allah. Then he commissioned me with what he wanted, saying, there's something going on among the enemy. Bring me the news of it. So I went out more scared and more cold than all the mankind. Actually, there's a story behind this, that they said that they asked the Sahaba who wants to go, and actually no one really wanted to, till the Prophet ﷺ told someone, go. He told Hudayfa, just go, right? So no one, imagine how, these are the Sahaba, and they just couldn't volunteer. They were so cold, and it was just a horrible time. So Hudayfa was sent. He said, I was more scared and more cold than all of mankind. He said, I made a supplication for me, and I advanced to my task as if I were walking in a bath. This was the heat of faith and the zeal of obedience which made the man overcome the severity of the weather. He says, as I turned to go, the Prophet ﷺ advised me not to cause any incident among the enemy until I returned to him. So he went to the enemy camp, and basically, he just kind of sat next to them. He just basically sat next to them. Basically, Hudayf had the intention to shoot Abu Sufyan because he was so close. But then he remembered what the Prophet ﷺ said, so he controlled himself. He said, if I had shot him, I would have hit him. I noticed the violent wind in every corner of the camp. So Abu Sufyan said, O assembly of Quraysh, you are not at home. Your cattle and sheep have died, and the Banu Qurayza have broken their promises to you. We've heard things of them which we dislike. Also, this violent wind has overturned our pots, put our fires, and uprooted our tents. So let us be on our way, for I am ready to depart. Then he went to his mount, which he tied, sat on it, and slapped it, whereupon it reared upon 3 legs. By Allah, its reins were untied only when it was standing. Hudayfa returned to the Prophet and told him all that he saw. When the day broke, the outskirts of Medina were clear. They basically left, and the siege was lifted. Peace returned, and faith came out of the trial successful. The Prophet ﷺ shouted, La ilaha illallah, wahdah, there is no God but Allah alone. He fulfilled the promise, sadaqa wa'adah, wa nasara abdah. And he has helped his servant and elevated his army and defeated the allies all by himself. Tranquility returned to the people's hearts, alhamdulillah. And this is basically how the siege of Medina was lifted. Now we go to something very, very important, and that is what happened with Banu Qurayza. What happened with Banu Qurayza? And just give me 1 second because I need to get something. I want to record this. All right, Bismillah. Sorry, this part is very important. Some people have asked me to talk about it a bit more and to record it because it is something that has caused some people doubt, and it is it's a huge issue because well, I think it's the time that we're living in, right? We are very used to living in a time of so-called peace and peaceful, peaceful society, but well, not really, right? Not really. So, yeah, Banu Qurayza, just give me 1 minute here, and I'm going to just set this up because I want to record this discussion. It is very, very important. Now, all right. Okay, Bismillah. All right. Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salallahu, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So after the Battle of the Confederates, when this amazing Sahabi knew, I mean, you're talking about a few days, he's just been Muslim for a few days, Na'im ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anh. He's just been Muslim for a few days. And the genius of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he sent him to Qurayza to tell them, hey, if the Quraysh does this, they're going to abandon you. And then he goes to Quraysh and he says, hey, if Banu Qurayza asks you for some insurance, then know that these guys are trying to abandon you. So smart. Where did the idea come? From the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as the Prophet told us, and as I said, in the art of war is the same statement, same principle, al-harbu khida, that war is deception. One man turned the whole war around, okay? But very important to understand again is that, brothers and sisters, understand the setup, okay? So Quraysh are in the front, covering, okay, Medina. Medina is not like what you know today. And by the way, you can still go today and see part of the trenches. But they're being surrounded. It's not easy to get in. There's a trench, and then there's the protection from the back, which is kind of like above a bit, as they said, that the Qurayza was above, Quraysh below. And Qurayza has basically betrayed the Prophet ﷺ, betrayed the Treaty of Medina. And betrayal at that time is basically a capital punishment. This is agreed upon in the war culture. It is a capital punishment, meaning they would have to be annihilated. So all the Muslim fighters would have been killed, and that's exactly what Abu Sufyan wants to do, of course. He wants to kill them. All the women would have been either killed or taken hostages, and same with the children. Most likely they wouldn't kill them, they would take them as hostages. That was the culture. So it's a huge issue, because sometimes people get doubt about the incident of Banu Qurayza. They don't understand the setup. For someone sitting in the 21st century in their comfortable home watching Netflix, of course they would not understand. But for someone being in the heat of the moment, the cold of the moment, as we said, it was so cold at that time, it was the winter in Medina, they will understand what was happening. Okay, what was happening. So, the Prophet tricked them. He set him up exactly what happened. Banu Qurayza asked for insurance. Abu Sufyan said, no way. We've already been warned by Nu'aym, so we're going to leave. And they left at night, alhamdulillah. So now the Prophet is left to deal with Banu Qurayza. And he cannot let them be, because there is just so much hatred in the heart for them breaking their covenant. And there is just so much that they have to prove. The Muslims have to show that we're not going to accept this kind of behavior. You have to understand, any slip, any mistake at this point can be destructive for the Muslims. So, what happened is basically the Muslims made sure that they left, and now they were turning towards Banu Qurayza. Okay? And subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ would say to the believers, speaking from the faithful spirit, from Angel Jibreel alayhi salam, the angels have not yet put down their arms. Allah orders you, Muhammad, to march to Banu Qurayza, for I'm heading towards them in order to crush them. And this is a hadith mentioned from the previous footnote. And this is established in Bukhari and the Muslim of Imam Ahmad on the authority of Aisha radiallahu anha. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ passed the order and urged the Muslims to be quick in executing it. So Al-Bayhaqi narrated that the Prophet ﷺ told his companions, I adjure you not to offer Asr until you reach Banu Qurayza. And this is a famous incident of the difference of opinion, and many of the ulama use this, that there's a difference of opinion where the Prophet ﷺ accepts both opinions. Because some people say, how can there be if there's someone has to be right? So some people prayed when they reached Banu Qurayza and delayed Asr, and some prayed on time. And it was just a difference of interpretation in the meaning of the words and the intention of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's a great, important lesson for fiqh that many of the students of knowledge know. Okay? So we know very well about what happened. Okay? So anytime, that is something that we don't need to discuss right now. But basically, what happened is that they went there, okay, and they're supposed to deal with them. Bottom line, Ka'b, the chief of Banu Qurayza, said, O fellow Jews, you see what has befallen you, and I shall give you 3 options. So take whichever of them you like. This is Ka'b saying now. When they asked what they were, he continued, he said, we should follow this man and believe in him, for by Allah it is clear to you that he's a prophet, sent by Allah, and he's the one whom you find in your scriptures. This is what Ka'b is saying. So you will safeguard your lives, your properties, your children, and your women's folk. Alright, so this is what Ka'b says. They said, we shall never abandon the law of the Torah, and we shall never exchange it for any other. So he says, you know that this is the truth. You know that Muhammad is the prophet. They said, no way, we're not accepting this. Alright, he said, if you reject this, then come, let us kill our children and women. Then let us go and meet Muhammad and his companions face to face with our swords, not leaving behind any property, so that Allah may decide between us and them. If we die, we die without leaving behind any progeny to be afraid for. And if we are victorious, by my life, we shall find other women and children. Look at the second option, right? They said, shall we kill these poor wretches? What good is left in life after them? They said, okay, if you reject it, then tonight is Saturday night, and perhaps Muhammad and his companions are feeling safe at this time. Let us attack them unaware. They replied, should we spoil our Sabbath for ourselves and commit in it what was before us never committed? So you see, none of these options are viable for them. He says, none of you has ever been resolute for one night since your mothers gave birth to you. So basically they did it. So now the Jews were surrounded by the Muslims, asked to speak with Abu Lubaba ibn Abdul Mundir. Okay, Abu Lubaba. So remember guys, again, this is not about Jews or this or this. This is about the Jews at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. But sadly, I guess some of that treacherousness is still, pushed on, and it still has become a culture amongst them. We're not practicing here anti-Semitism, like Muslims are Semites, Arabs are Semites. We are not here trying to cause hatred towards anyone. There's a difference, we said, between Jews and Zionists. There's a difference between Jews themselves, as Allah says, min Ahl Kitab, from the people of the book. There are some that are good people, and they recognize the truth. So that's not the way. We're not like preaching hate or anything. We're talking about a historical event. So they wanted to speak to Abu Lubaba. And basically, they sought his advice as to whether they should submit to Muhammad's decree, and he replied positively, pointing to his neck as if to say that it would definitely be slaughter. Then he immediately realized that he has betrayed the Prophet ﷺ by doing so. And in this confused state, he hurried to the Prophet ﷺ's mosque in Medina, where he tied himself to one of the columns in the masjid, swearing that he would not let loose until Allah pardoned him. Okay? So subhanAllah, so he basically just kind of went like this, like if you submit to Muhammad, it's like death, right? And then he realized that, oh my God, like, did I just give it out? So he went and ran away, and he basically felt so sorry. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this. He revealed an ayah in Surah, chapter in Tawbah, verse 102. And there are others who have acknowledged their faults. They mixed the righteous action with another that was bad. It may be that Allah will relent towards them. Indeed, Allah is relenting, merciful. So the siege continued for 25 days on Banu Qurayza, which during the Muslims allowed the Jews who had refused to betray the Prophet during the battle of the ditch to leave and go wherever they wish as a reward for their faithfulness. So some people, you see again, they're not all the same. We have to reiterate that. Some did not betray the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ allowed them to leave. Okay? Now, Ali cried, O battalion of faith, by Allah, I shall either taste what Hamza tasted, Hamza radiallahu anh, or I shall open up their forts. This is Ali radiallahu anh. With him was none other than Az-Zubair ibn Awwam radiallahu anh. Quraysh said something interesting. They said, O Muhammad, we shall accept the decree of Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh. Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh. So thus they came out of their forts and were taken to a prison camp where Sa'ad was brought to make a final decision. So they realized they cannot fight anymore. It was too long now. It was 25 days. So they said, look, let's just accept arbitration. Whatever Sa'ad says, we will accept it. So Sa'ad came. And Sa'ad was the chief of the Aus, who were allies of Banu Qurayza and Jahiliyyah. And the Jews accepted this relationship. They thought they were going to benefit it. So they pleaded with him to be lenient and so on. However, Sa'ad did not forget, amid the cries of hope directed towards him, that Islam and its sons, the Medina, its fruits, its crops, its progeny, its sanctuaries were rescued from the forces that were attacking it by a miracle. Right? It was just one man, that a Sahabi that I told you, that basically was able to change things around, because the Prophet ﷺ told them what to do. If not, they would have all perished. Everyone would have been killed. And then women and children taken as slaves. So, Banu Qurayza were treacherous. Alright? So basically, there's an interesting incident here that happened. But anyway, so Sa'ad did not hesitate to say to his people after their pleading that the time has come now that Sa'ad should be afraid of no one's blame for the cause of Allah. So Sa'ad decreed that the men should be killed, their women and children taken captives, and their properties distributed. The Prophet ﷺ endorsed this resolute decree, saying to Sa'ad, "You have decreed for them decreed by Allah from above the 7 heavens." From above the 7 heavens. This is a sound hadith narrated by Ibn Ishaq, and Ibn Hisham took it, and Bukhari and Muslim also narrated from Abu Sa'id al-Khudri without the part from the narration from above the 7 heavens. Now, so Sa'ad basically said men to be killed, women and children captives, properties distributed. This is the culture of that time. This is what becomes a bit of a problem for a lot of 21st century Muslims who are living, playing PlayStation and watching Netflix every day and on their phones all the time. Everything, our life is on mobile phones. So I don't really psychologically expect people to fully understand the seriousness of this event, especially people who are raised into a very comfortable society. And maybe people who are raised on the war and so on, Syria, Iraq, they might understand it even today. But as for like your average, Canadian, Australian, Malay, whatever, might not be the easiest thing to understand. Maybe grandparents, who have been under occupation of Japan or the British, and there was a war even here in Malaysia, might understand what it means to be under war and what it means to be betrayed and what it means to be, and same with other countries. This is where the problem comes. So a lot of people have a doubt about this. How come the Prophet of Mercy, right? Because see, we pick and choose. A lot of people deny. A lot of people say no. A lot of Christians will attack, even though they have a huge history of bloodshed, unjustly. The Prophet ﷺ has a reason here. And they asked for arbitration, and the decision was given. So there's a lot of weakness like that, and a lot of people will attack the Muslims, and there's a lot of Orientalists and missionaries who try to cast doubts into the hearts of people. And people who have the standard of today, everything is peaceful, peace, living together, they will not understand. So the first thing the shaitan puts in their minds, like, how come a prophet of mercy, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, will basically order for these men to be killed. And you have to understand, it was a slaughter. It happened in one day pretty much, and it was a execution style. So trenches, this is what happened. Trenches were dug. Trenches, yes. I know it's tough, but this is in the seerah. You cannot hide it. You have to understand, we're talking about it. So if you're weak of stomach, please don't listen. You can turn off now. So trenches were dug. And again, we're not saying that's what we have to do. Or this is what, we're just saying what happened and why it happened. Right? Like the world is so hypocritical, They fought 2 world wars where millions of people were killed and left in trenches to die. And then they have an issue with a punishment that was given for betrayal. Trenches were dug in the market square of Medina, in the market square of Medina, for people to see what it means to be treacherous. And subhanAllah, till today, treachery is a big thing that destroys millions of lives. So, the fighters were brought to them in groups, one after the other, to pay the price for their treachery. The Jews who were taken away to their deaths asked their chief, Ka'b, "What do you think he is doing to us?" He replied, "Do you ever have any sense? Can you not see that the announcer never stops? And by that whichever of you leaves to go with him never returns? By God, it is to be killed." Yes, it was a killing. Okay? So, basically, they checked which men, even the narration that says, they basically checked to see the signs of puberty on the fighters, and those that were past puberty were treated as men. All right, I know it's tough, I know it's hard to swallow, but this is what happened, and they were basically killed. There's no lethal injection, there's no execution by being shot. It was basically at the sword. Okay, So there was a few hundred people who were killed that day. Huyay, who was brought to face his end, he looked at the Prophet ﷺ and said, "By God, I do not blame myself for my hostility towards you. Nevertheless, whoever deserts God deserts him." Then he turned to the people and said, "O people, I have nothing against the order of God. He has decreed slaughter for the children of Israel." Then he sat down and he was beheaded. About this, a poet says, "By your life, Ibn Akhtab did not blame himself, but whoever deserts Allah is deserted. He fought until he reached his limits and stirred up trouble, and every troublemaker seeks glory." This is just a poet wrote about that. He was brave and everything, but in the end, he faced death. Okay, again, you see the braveness. They're brave. They're not cowards. Some of these men were not cowards. You have to understand that. But in the end, they had false principles, ideologies that were baseless, and they betrayed the Prophet ﷺ, and that's exactly what happened. That is exactly what happened. So, the numbers differ, but there was a few hundred, up to 600, I think, 700 people who were executed that day. All right, you have to understand that. And that's exactly what happened. Women and children were saved. They were distributed. That's the culture of battle at that time. Properties were distributed, and so on. And this was is it fair? Yes, it was fair, 100%. You have to understand. It is fair. Because it's like saying today, is it fair to have United Nations that they will fight, or whatever, and they left the Bosnians? I don't know. I mean, subhanAllah, it's war. I don't know. No one can say anything, especially when we believe as Muslims that the Prophet ﷺ does not make a mistake. He does not talk from his own desire. In huwa illa wahyu yuha. It is a revelation that is given to him. Is it like tough? Yes. Is it harsh? Yes. Is it, how does that fit with ma arsalnaka ila rahmatan lil alamin? It fits, because the Prophet ﷺ came as a mercy to mankind for people who want mercy, not people who are going to kill. They wanted to kill the Prophet ﷺ. And you have to understand, has the Prophet ﷺ not taken that decision and agreed to that decision? Again, politically speaking, from a war strategy, that would have showed weakness. You have to understand, everyone like a jackal was just watching and looking and waiting for the Prophet ﷺ to make a mistake so they can attack Medina. Tribes are still scattered around the desert. Bedouins. The Quraysh is still a threat. Still a threat. You still have quite a long time to go. So the Muslim Ummah, they need to understand historically, strategically, from a war perspective, why this happened. Not just because, I'm a Muslim alone and I'm so peaceful and Islam means peace. That's all we hear every day, Islam means peace. Yet no one has given us peace. Now, I'm not saying here that, hey, let's do the same. I'm not endorsing violence. I'm not planning to go to jail or to people to say it's hate speech. That's not what I'm doing. I'm talking from a historical perspective, academic perspective, to respond to the doubts of Muslims here who read the amount of information that's given about this incident online by the missionaries, those who are attacking Islam, liberal Muslims who are trying to confuse others, right? And the average Muslim man or woman, young, youth goes to university, and their teacher says, "Hey, do you know about Banu Qurayza?" And they're like, "No." "Do you know your Islam?" "Yeah, I know my Islam. Islam is peace." "Oh, really? How about this?" "Oh, this might not be authentic." Then they pull out authentic. "Oh, this might not be authentic." And then again. So the person gets confused and people leave Islam. Why do they leave Islam? Is there an issue with what happened? No, I don't think so. From an anthropology point of view, the study of human beings, development, cultures, philosophies, looking at the history. If you look at Alexander the Great, Caesar, Kisra, all these leaders, Napoleon, right? That people celebrate, the West celebrates. There's a hypocritical approach when it comes to the Prophet salallahu alaihi wasallam, because supposedly they think that prophets are just people who come and sit and are like, just away from the world and just preach, I don't know, to eat fish and stay in a mountain. That's not what it is. If you look at it, look at Musa alayhi salam, look at King David, King Solomon. Throughout history, God sent people and prophets who were also generals and leaders and had to be politically involved in what happened. All right? So again, that has to be understood. Muslims need not to feel doubt that, oh my God, my prophet is like not merciful or something. Actually, that's exactly what, was expected at that time by the culture. And that is why that last person says that's what happened. That's what we deserve. We're gonna get it, right? That's exactly right. They didn't say, "Oh, this is bad. You're not merciful." No, they knew exactly what was, and that's actually the law of the Torah as well. Treachery in war is basically punishable by death. Any kind of betrayal, treachery against God, and of course, here we have to keep that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is in the equation, is punishable, right? Till today, there's so many laws that are punishable by death. Betrayal, treachery against the country, against the state, in many countries is still punishable by death. So Muslims need not to lose faith or hope just because, these 100 men, not 100, 600, 700 men were killed in one day. And it was decapitation pretty much. So yeah, tough, yes, bloody, yes, it was, but trust me, for hundreds of years, people didn't mess with the Muslims because they understood, they remember. And they will remember, they remember till today, right? But sadly, Muslims are being killed all over the world because of weakness. Now keep in mind, you're talking about war concept. You're not talking about someone just taking it into their own hands, doing terrorism. No, we do not agree with that. You're talking about system, you're talking about an army, you're talking about a state, you're talking about the closest thing that would be compared to it today would be like a war between two countries, right? And, fighters dying, obviously. Fighters dying. That's still today it happens. Till today people are executed. Till today people are, jailed. Till today people are taken prisoners. This is the reality of the world, right? So again, for the person who's watching Netflix and playing on their iPhone, of course, it's a bit difficult to understand, but I think that's why this Quran, it is أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. People, not just emotional read and like, oh my God, this doesn't seem right. No, people of intellect, people of insight, people who look into the history, who can connect to events, who can see the reality of life. These are the people that the Quran addresses. These are the people the Prophet came for, and these are the people that we should be. Not everyone is there. It's not the problem of the Quran or the Prophet's behavior, or the Seerah, the Sahaba, the Hadith. No, it's our weakness that we do not understand life. It's our weakness that we've lived in a very comfortable life. Because trust me, if you talk to a war-torn society who understands what treachery is, they might look at this event and be like, well, what's the problem? I don't see a problem. Oh, but they killed 600-700, cut theirs. What's the problem? They killed us, or they killed before for so many times. They betrayed, they would have, I don't see a problem. Men, women, children, Muslim, non-Muslims would see this event from a different perspective, in a different context, maybe having come out of war or still on the war, understanding what is treachery, understanding what is betrayal, having been under fire for 10, 15 years continuously, their way of looking is different. That's why it's so important to understand the different dynamics of society and of human life. It's not just because you're sitting in America or the UK, London, somewhere on a nice couch, okay, relaxing and having a remote control in your hand, and because this hadith comes or this incident comes, and you're like, oh, I don't think this is authentic, or oh, I don't believe in Islam anymore, or oh, this is not mercy, or no, that's not how it works. So I hope we can understand that. I hope there's no doubt that the Prophet ﷺ, there's no contradiction here, that he is the most merciful, that he was sent as a mercy to mankind. He was sent as a mercy to mankind, not to, pet puppies and, and play with kittens, and to, have children, embrace children or something like that, and just, give women's rights. No, that's not the mercy that the Prophet ﷺ was sent. Even though, yes, there is animal rights in Islam, yes, there is women's rights in Islam, all these things are covered. But the Prophet was sent as a mercy to mankind to bring people from the darkness into the light. لِيُخْرِجَهُمْ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. With what? With Aqidah. With who is Allah. With Quran and Sunnah. With this life that is called Islam. That is the rahmah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Prophet. Not the 21st, rahmah that Muslims try to impress the non-Muslims. And the Prophet was a mercy to the whole world. And then someone pulls out this event of Banu Qurayza and we're like, that doesn't look very merciful. And indeed the Prophet was not merciful here because they deserve it. And that's the Prophet had to put his foot down to show Allah is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, but He's also Jabbar, right? Keep in mind, Allah is punishing sometimes. Allah is mighty. Allah is strong. Okay, yes, He's merciful. So that's the same thing. Because people think there's contradiction. No, there's no contradiction. The Prophet is Rahmatan Al-Alameen, even though he executed Banu Qurayza. Okay, about 600 people or more died, as I said, in this, or were executed. So I hope this puts things to rest, inshallah, and gives us an understanding of the incident of Banu Qurayza, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum. And we move to the next point, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. So the next point is the new phase, and that is the incident of the Umrah of Hudaybiyah. This is where the Prophet ﷺ had the idea of visiting the sacred masjid, and basically they wanted to do Umrah, right? So how can they intend to make pilgrimage in these circumstances? Quraysh was not over yet. People were still, having problems. There were still issues. The Prophet ﷺ wanted to use this opportunity to assert the right of the Muslims to perform their acts of worship. So now he's already asserted the rights of the Muslims as a military strength, that they're strong, that they're, what they can do. They've defeated the Quraysh in many things. So now I think there's no doubt in Arabia that the Muslims are there to stay. But now he has to assert their right to pilgrimage. Their right to pilgrimage. And to follow the footsteps of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Surah 22, verse 26 to 27. And remember, when we prepare for Abraham a place at the holy house, saying, make not anything, associate no partners with me, purify my house for those who make tawaf, and those who stand, and those who bow and make prostration. Proclaim to mankind the pilgrimage, Hajj. Wa'adhin, make adhan. They will come to you on foot and on every lean camel. They will come from every direction. So the people wanted, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ wanted to make Umrah. So after the Quraysh has exhausted their energies in insulting the Muslims and so on, right? Now it was the time the Prophet ﷺ thought, and basically he summoned the Muslim community and those who lived around Medina, and he announced that he wanted to perform Umrah, not war. He didn't want to go to battle. So he was taking with him sacrificial animals, which will be slaughtered and fed to the poor of Mecca. The same people had gathered to examine them in the battle of the ditch. Did the unbelievers really understand this intention and assess correctly the status of the person who expressed it? No. They still had these problems, this conscious and these evil things, and they couldn't accept it. The Bedouins who lived around Medina and the hypocrites who were of the same mind knew that the people of Mecca would fight Muhammad. And if he insisted on making the pilgrimage, as he announced, the Quraysh would not let them. So they would fight. So chapter 48, verse 11 to 12 says, those who are wandering Arabs, the Bedouins, who were left behind will tell you, our possessions and our households occupied us, so ask forgiveness for us. They speak with their tongue that which is not in their hearts. Say, who can help you against Allah if He intends you harm or intends you benefit? No, Allah is always aware of what you do. No, you thought that the messenger and the believers would never return to their own people, and that was made fair seeming in your hearts, and you did think an evil thought, and you were worthless people. So Allah exposes their intentions. There's still a lot of hypocrites, a lot of cowards around Medina. So the Muslims left with the Prophet ﷺ, and the numbers were about 1,400 Muslims left Medina. And it was in Dhul Qa'dah, in the 6th year of the Hijrah. And they traveled, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when they reached Asafan, which has 2 stages from Mecca, the news came that the Quraysh were on the way to stop them. They were led by Khalid ibn al-Walid, and they had sworn that no Muslim would enter their town. At this time yet, Khalid did not yet embrace Islam. So, basically they were about to fight again. But the Prophet ﷺ did not want to fight. The Prophet ﷺ did not want a fight. The Prophet ﷺ just wanted to do Umrah, right? So they didn't know what to do. You'll see there's a lot of back and forth, but basically there was negotiation. And there was negotiation to try to convince the Prophet ﷺ not to go forward. The first to come to him was Badil ibn al-Waraq, along with some men from the tribe of Khuzā'. They approached him and they asked why he had come. To this he replied that he had not come for war, he'd come as a pilgrim. They returned to the Quraysh and said, O assembly of Quraysh, you are being hasty with Muhammad. He has not come for war, but as a pilgrim to the house. Then they sent Mikraj ibn Hafs, and he returned with the same news as Badil. After them, they sent the chief of the Ahabish, Al-Halis ibn al-Alqamah. When the Prophet ﷺ saw him, he says, surely he is coming from the people who are confused. Send the sacrificial animals out for him to see. When he saw the animals coming towards him from the banks of the wadi, he returned to the Quraysh before meeting the Prophet ﷺ because of what he saw. So when he told them, they said, sit down, you are an unintelligent Bedouin. Al-Halis became angry and shouted, O assembly of Quraysh, by God, it is not for this that we have become your allies and made a contract with you. Shall we bar from the house of God one who has come showing respect for it, by him in whose hands my soul is? Either give way to Muhammad, and what he came for I shall leave with every one of the Ahabish, the mercenaries. They replied, wait, let us be for a while, at least till we decide for ourselves what we want. Then he sent Urwa ibn Mas'ud to the Prophet ﷺ. However, he did not want to return from negotiating with the Prophet, with the Muslims, only to hear abuse from the Quraysh. So he said, O assembly of Quraysh, I have seen what ill treatment, you insult you gave to those you sent. So you know that you are the father and I am the son. I heard of what happened to you, and I gathered those of my people who obey me and came supporting you. They say, you're right, we have no grievances against you. So he came to the Prophet ﷺ, sat down in front of him and said, Muhammad, you have gathered crowds of people. The Quraysh have come out with their women and children. Okay, by God, I can see these people deserting you tomorrow. Abu Bakr was listening behind the Prophet ﷺ, and when Urwa alluded to the Muslims, he disdainfully told them an insult, right? Because Urwa said that the Muslims will leave you. And Abu Bakr gave him some strong words. Okay, I don't want to read them because maybe they're not, and some people think that, oh, Abu Bakr, how can he speak like this? Yes. Sometimes a person is upset and he will say something, okay? Sometimes I told you, we sometimes suffer from holier than Abu Bakr or Omar or the Prophet syndrome. I'm not saying here that we should speak bad, but these were human beings. That's, I think, the only lesson we can take from this incident is that these people were human beings, not angels. Now, okay, so we stop here. Inshallah, next time we continue with the negotiations of Hudaybiyah and what happens. Inshallah, barakallahu feekum. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.